in the house. Stepping out. Hey, we stepping out all night, y'all. Hands in the air, party right, y'all. Stepping out all night, y'all. Hands in the air, party right, y'all. Stepping out all night, y'all.
So this is the final panel of the 4th annual Black Comics Arts Festival. So thank you for being here.
Yes.
I know you spent your money. I know you're probably hangry right now because it is dinner time. You've been walking the floor, so those of you here, we really appreciate it. This is called the Black and Brown panel, but one of our representatives isn't here today, but we'll definitely talk about what the next steps are for the Black Comics Arts Festival, because after 4 years, first of all, we're grateful to eBay for the sponsorship. Yes. Grateful to the San Francisco Public Library for the work that they've done. Stuart and Naomi, thank you so much. We're also, who else do we?
Aaron Griselle.
Aaron Griselle of the NorCal LOK Foundation,
yes,
who is the aegis of what we operate under. So right, thank you to Aaron. And thank you for everybody who has took their time off of their day. Some people come all 3 days.
That's right.
I was talking to someone earlier. This festival has raised some kids. They came here at like a few months old. Now they're almost 5, going into kindergarten, and they're reading already because they read comic books.
Really?
Yeah, I talked to 2 families today, and I was just like, that's dope. That really bugged me out a little bit. I was like, oh, word?
Yeah. That's what we're here for.
That's exactly what we're here for. And one of the reasons I know why I still participate and be a part of this festival is, I say this all the time, and I mean it with my heart, that if you don't tell your own story, someone will tell your story for you and they'll tell it wrong.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And I think that us owning our own narrative is one of the most powerful things that you can do.
Yes.
And I think that what we don't want to do is like be the Native American kid who goes to the museum to see what his granddad has in his closet. Like, that's what we don't want to do. We've given away so much culture for free. And
right,
so I'm glad that we're able to highlight creators who normally won't ever see a major audience. They're not part of DC, Marvel, they're not part of a machine. A lot of the people out there today are entrepreneurs, mm-hmm, who are doing this for themselves. People on this panel are entrepreneurs. And with that, out to my left, we have Stacy Robinson. If you saw the posters in the front, his work is on those posters. Artist extraordinaire, gave a very well-received workshop this morning that people are still talking about.
Yeah.
So, Stacy, I'm going to mispronounce his name, but over to that is Frederick Aldama.
No, you got it.
Okay, thank you. Which I honestly don't know too much about, so we give us a brief introduction. I don't.
Yeah, so I'm a professor at The Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio, and I've written a bunch of books on Latinx superheroes and Latinx independent comic creators. Co-founded with John and Ricardo Solcon, the Brown Black Comics Expo out there in Columbus, Ohio. Stacy's been a big part of that. And yeah, here with you guys.
Yes.
And in the final chair, I can't really say enough about John Jennings. It'd be an entire panel just talking about the work that he does. But if I had to sum John up, really, it's really about its heart. He takes time out of his day to talk to younger artists, burgeoning artists. He big ups everybody. He's usually a creative endeavor. Creative field can be really cutthroat. John probably has more integrity, more empathy and compassion than anybody I've ever come across in a creative field. And he enhances anybody and everyone who is in his presence. And so we can talk about the Octavia Butler Kindred with Damien Duffy adaptation. We can talk about Damien and John's Parable of the Sower, Parable of the Talents adaptation. We can talk about Blue Hand Mojo. I mean, there's so much that we can talk about. We can talk about him coining an academic term, the ethnogothic. But we can talk about all this. But what it really comes down to is that he is literally why comics matter. And so that's John Jennings.
We could also talk about the fact that he did the cover to my latest book, Latinx Superheroes.
Oh, that's your book. I bought that yesterday. I'm teaching it in the fall.
Yeah.
Well done.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I don't even, I mean, it's going to be really difficult to talk with me all choked up. Man. Come on now. What you trying to do to me? Like, I'm seriously grateful. And I only understand how much of an honor it is to be on the stage with these gentlemen. Sean Taylor is also a co-founder of this event as well. So I just want to make sure you understand that his dedication is really wonderful. But yeah, we just want to talk about this festival and the type of work that we do. So yeah, just I'm gonna jump it off, or you want me to?
Yeah. Okay. So when we talk about like diversity, I think I hate the term diversity more than I hate like a lot of things, because I think that diversity is inherently like diversity, like multiculturalism, is a very conservative idea. Because in the 40s, there's a guy, ethnic musicologist in Cuba called Fernando Ortiz, and he talked about the idea of transculturalism.
Right.
Yeah.
That culture actually isn't just a thing, but it's actually a movement between, and it's not always pretty. So if you want to read a really good book called Read Cuban Counterpoint, one of the best books I've ever read in my life about this idea. And so I think the idea of transculture that we're all involved in various ways is something that we want to really bring to this festival. And so, John, I really want, this is the 4th year. Festivals like restaurants usually only go for 1 year, then they're done.
Right.
Right? So this is the 4th year of this. So, John, what is like the transcultural vision of this festival?
Okay. Well, here's the thing. I mean, we were thinking about this when me and my wife just moved out here from Buffalo, New York. And as Frederick said, we met together with Ricardo Padilla, who actually is the co-founder of the Latino Comix Expo. And we decided as the three of us that we should do something in the Midwest at Ohio State that actually represented the idea of unity and representation and standing together against kind of resisting this kind of erasure that happened that Sean was talking about. So when Aaron and I first met when I was out here, I actually do some visiting artist work out here in the summers. And we met up and that's how we ended up talking about this particular festival. And I was thinking as I was unpacking, I was like, you know what? We really should expand the dream, because this particular event is actually dedicated to the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., right? And actually this particular festival is like, as Sean was saying, is under the purview of the MLK NorCal. And so his dream, a part of his dream and our mission is to unify and to push forward and to stand together. And so we're like, you know what? The BCAF, the Black Comic Arts Festival, should be the Black and Brown Comic Arts Festival and become one of the sister organizations to SoulCon. And we want to expand that as well. So that was the mission. And so we together think that we should just move forward with that, and all of us in some ways are social justice oriented faculty or teachers. And also, we're really centered on cultural activism, outreach. I would love for other people like Frederick and Stacy to talk about some of their work in the community. I mean, we do a lot of work with younger people, and we want to bring them into this space and empower them. And that's actually why we do the work that we do. Last thing I want to mention is that Stacy just came from the Schaumburg Black Comic Book Festival, which is our sister organization that we do at the Schaumburg Center for Research in Black Culture. Tony Medina was there, and Stacey Robinson were there, and this happens on the same weekend. So what we used to do is they just did this, was jump on a plane in the middle of that festival and fly out here so we can bring this particular festival to you here in San Francisco. But I would love for Frederick to start and Stacey to talk about some of the work they've been up to.
Yeah, so thanks, John. Columbus, anybody been to Columbus? I know, Tony, you've been there. Yeah, Dave. Well, so Columbus in the last 10 years has had mushrooming, like beautiful kind of growth of Latinx folks in ways that the city had never seen before. Mm-hmm. So they were used to kind of race relations, the ones that were woke as being black and white, but didn't really kind of get our kind of new infusion of, Latinx people's families, communities that were growing. I went out to the high schools when I went out to take my job there in 2005, and I saw these young folks that were falling through the cracks out there. Mm-hmm. Latinx folks, teachers, principals, staff didn't know how diverse we are linguistically, color, cultural backgrounds, experiences. They did not know what to do with them. They still don't know what to do with them. And I also saw that we were being, the communities, as we see a lot in cities and places in this country, there was a divide among our communities, our African American brothers and sisters, mm-hmm. and our Latino mm-hmm. Brothers and sisters. And so the idea of bringing us together through comic books, what better way to bring our children together? We also bus K through 12s for SoulCon, for workshops with all of us guys. everybody there on campus, and it's also to remind that campus, which is 52-something thousand students that are predominantly white, that the world doesn't look like them, just that 52,000, that the world is actually much, like way cooler than just that. And so, anyway, that's what we do with SoulCon. But I also just wanted to say that I've done a lot of collaboration with John, Stacy, working on posters and stuff. What I love about our work together is that we don't have to explain stuff. Like, we can just create together and make that transcultural kind of creation, this new thing, without us having to explain a whole bunch of stuff.
Right.
We just get it. And, you know, so with that, I'll pass it over to Stacy.
Yeah, to think about community, thanks. Think about community work. I just thought about this yesterday. Someone asked me about the work that I do, and I realized that at 45, I realized I've been working with young people for over half my life now. And I was like, wow, that is really amazing. It's over 20 years of working with the Boys and Girls Club and the Boys Club of New York, and everywhere I moved, I found the community and I found the young people, and I was always concerned about helping them find their narrative. I never thought about it. It was always just what I did. And after many years of doing that, I just realized, well, this is just going to be the rest of my life, right? This is what I do now, you know. And it's and my work has expanded in more recent years to being more strategic in that by purposely, I'll say, activating certain spaces in a very different way. Using the museums, the libraries, and the gallery systems to develop my practice in a very specific way.
Which are historically exclusionary.
Well, that's exactly the point, right? So those spaces typically don't talk about Black and brown stories, especially contemporary stories, right? So what I do with my work is I create work that speculates Black and brown futures, and in making these art pieces, I'll display pieces in, like I said, museums, libraries, galleries, and I invite the marginalized community who is never invited into that gallery or museum space, and they won't come typically because the narrative is not about them, the artwork is not about them.
That's right.
Or about us. I also invite those gallery patrons that I never have to invite. They will go to every single art exhibition. They support the galleries with their finances. They're going to come anyway, but they are invited into the space as well. Those two communities typically don't have conversations together inside of the gallery space. So with that, I also invite the activist community, those who are on the grassroots, on the ground, and I invite them into the space to help facilitate the difficult conversations. All of those things happen inside of the gallery, the museum, the library, that is typically not used to in having a very difficult conversation around what I call failed integration, right? Even Dr. King said, "I fear I am integrating my people into a burning house." I try to have that conversation inside the space that literally keeps us excluded, right? That has become a part of my practice over the last several years. All centered around really making our narratives, what I call the private conversation that we all have inside of our kitchens, inside of our living rooms, making that conversation very public.
That's right. That's right.
And I think something that exemplifies what we're talking about is Damien, who's in the audience, Tony Medina, who's in the audience, Stacy, and John. There's a graphic novel called I Am Alfonso Jones, and it sold out like instantly. Please get it, because I mean, for me, as somebody who straddles both worlds, being Jamaican and Puerto Rican, I'm actually in both worlds and holding that and wondering, like, where is that space for me? Looking at my daughter, where's that space for my daughter? But this idea of the transcultural moment, this movement, I Am Alfonso Jones speaks to that confluence, and what they did so masterfully in that graphic novel was to show how ordinary transculturalism is, how ordinary it is. And I think also something I want to touch on something what Frederick said about people not finding their space. Just because you speak Spanish doesn't mean you speak it the same way. And we were talking about Hondurans, we're talking about Puerto Ricans, Cubanos, Colombians, we have that. And then not to mention, not all black is the same. Because I may be African American presenting, but at home we might as well have been in Jamaica, in house. And so we understand that when we talk about multiculturalism and diversity, we have that within our own people. And we have to honor that, but being able to bring this together and weave a wider narrative, as John was saying, being able to really make sure our stories complement each other and are not in opposition, because we are placed in opposition all the time by a master narrative.
That's right.
So our Buckminster Fuller said this really great quote, which I'll paraphrase. He said, "You don't fight things by fighting the existing reality. You create a new reality to render the old one obsolete." I think that what we're doing with this festival, what we're doing with a lot of the books, I Am Alfonso Jones, which is probably the most important graphic novel in the past 10 years. And I would say that with no hyperbole.
Man.
Thank you. I just want to add, that is I can't remember if you said this or not, it's being called the first Black Lives Matters inspired graphic novel. It's an honor to have.
Humbling.
It's very humbling. It's a very big responsibility, but it's also a very big honor as well.
You know, I saw that Aaron Grizel just came in. Is he back there? Aaron. Hey, how you doing?
Come on, give Aaron a hand while he was up here.
Yes.
You're the best contestant on this panel.
I mean, this is one of the hardest working gentlemen that I've ever met.
And the most well dressed.
And this event and everything that you've enjoyed during the day would not be possible without this man's hard work. So I want him to kind of talk a little bit about why we want to do this merger and you know, how today's events have gone too. We're very proud to know him, and I'm so glad that we got a chance to get together and talk about these issues together.
Yes.
So thank you, John. Wasn't expecting this, but
No, I saw you come in, and I know it's been a long day, but you know, there's been a lot of people who've loved this space, and a lot of that's because of what you do.
Yes.
well, thank you so much. So we were talking last evening, staying up late, and Joe Illich sat down while we were sitting down. John showed him a picture of what we were thinking about in terms of this new relationship and how we wanted to proceed going forward. And Joe said, he jumped out of his seat. He said, "Man, this is the world. This is the reality. This is where the world is going to be and where the world is, and this is where we have to be." Right? As the executive director of the Martin Luther King Foundation, one of the things that we've stressed this year was this notion of the urgency of now. 50 years, Martin Luther King was assassinated on April 4th, 1968. We spent 50 years trying to work out our nation's salvation.
Wow.
And now we're here on a weekend where half of the world is a shithole country. Africa as a country, you get where I'm going. None of this stuff makes sense. But what we've stressed this year is the reality of the obvious. The reality of the obvious. Dr. King, and this gets around to why we want to come together. Dr. King stated in 1968, it was on video. He was sweating, sweat across his brow, talking to me, and he just was angry and said, "Look, man, I'm going to confess something to you. I am tired. I'm tired of marching. I'm tired of doing all of this stuff, all to try to convince a small smidgen of the population about the rights that I obviously had at birth, right? And so for us and for BCAF, in my mind, the idea is to bring people into the reality of the obvious. The human condition between you and between me is one of innate, obvious dignity. Just on the tactile front, you got hands, we've got feet, we've got head, we've got ears. You get what I mean? I mean, it's just obvious stuff. And that's the thing that we need to ensure, in my mind, that this space is able to create. Because once we are clear on the obvious, then we can create wholesomeness, honesty, regular dealing with people, you know what I mean? And not have to use all of this language to try to get out of explaining what the obvious is, to explain away the obvious. And that's all that goes on with all of this talking.
Right.
You get what I mean? So that's what I think BCAF is to me. The other thing that I think BCAF is, and I've been forced to by John Jennings and David Walker. They said, look, man, and they told me for 2 hours, they said on the phone, we are not going to have this Marvel comic DC situation overrunning a space that is ours. I'm just letting you know that. Look, if you're gonna go and try to get them, you know, we're gonna have a problem. Because this is for our young people. This is for, we want to create a safe space for people to dream. Dwayne Detterville has in the San Francisco Public Library for 3 months, this is the first time this stuff has ever happened. For 3 months, he has an exhibit up there of young folks that he was with in the juvenile detention center here in San Francisco, drawing, using their imagination to draw superheroes at their own dreams. These are people that people wrote off. And you can see their dreams there, and they're so just tangible and vivid. That's why we're here.
That's right.
And that's why this space together, the black and the brown together, can rule the space. And it's in spaces like this that I'm so happy to be a part of. That's why we did what we did.
Thank you.
That's beautiful.
So, Freddie, do you have any last words you want to add? Not to put you on the spot, but you didn't talk about laser. I wanted to, you know.
Yeah, so, well, let me, just on a personal note, John knows this because we worked on a piece together that was kind of biographical, but you know, I was the kid who got into Berkeley under affirmative action, and I was the kid that came from a pretty rough neighborhood, a pretty rough school, and guess what? It was actually all along the way African American women that like saved me. I'm telling you the truth here. There was a wonderful woman at Berkeley that admitted me. She saw something in my application that other people didn't. And when I got hired at OSU, the chair of the department, Valerie Lee, African American woman, I mean, I can say at all of the moments that were hinge moments, big, strong moments, it was African American women that literally saved my life. Literally saved my life. I want to say it.
No, seriously, that's awesome, because I'm getting all...
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, laser is when I got to OSU, I told them that I needed money to build an outreach program to the community. I mentioned that I saw these Latinx high school kids that were getting lost in the cracks. When I started it, I had 5 kids just like me in high school, not really thinking that college was for them. They were told that they should either work for the landscape business, get out of school early, or work at the Budweiser factory. And I went in there, and now we're in 13 different high schools across Columbus, and I have 450 Latinx students that are on their way to college. So, you know, instead of pain, well, it's just part of my nature, but, you know, those women in my life and taking that with me, but also like my colleagues here, my friends, that rear view mirror, those moments in our lives live with us like they were yesterday. And it's that urgency that we bring to our work, to our collaboration, and to bring people like yourselves to this space so that we can, from here, grow and build and make those differences for the next generations.
Yes.
I'm gonna do my best to not be, I'm already choked up, but you just made me think about the fact that we talk about this idea of transculturalism. So I went to Jackson State University in Mississippi, HBCU, right? And this was after a brief stint in the military, and the dean of the honors college was this amazing woman from Mexico, immigrant, who would come in, didn't know how to speak English, taught herself how to speak English, got her PhD in literature, political science. Her name was Dr. Maria Luisa Alvarez Harvey, and she was a dean of the W.E.B. Du Bois Honors College, and she was the one who got me into school. So I wouldn't be here without her.
And I think it's important that we look at how many of those moments actually happen all the time, but we're actually trained, socialized to not recognize those moments.
Right.
We are trained to look at things as, we always talk about microaggressions, but we never talk about micro-alliances.
Oh, man.
And I think it's really important that we start looking at those, the micro-alliances. I mean, being somebody caught between those two worlds and seeing what I get from both of those worlds, seeing what I get from being able to go into a place and speak Spanish, and how appreciative I feel, or people who are asking me, people who don't know anything about what it means to be a black-looking Spanish person, and being able to talk to them about that and understand, like, we are rainbow sherbet, damn it. We are every possible color, flavor you've ever seen in your life, and it's normal.
That's the word I was just normal.
This is normal, and this is normal. And what we want to do is we want to reify the global normal, is what we really want to do with this collaboration.
And we're not going to take a lot of their time, right? But I want to show you this image. This is something we did at the last minute with Jules Rivera. I mean, it's been a lot of like planning to put into this, but
Jules Rivera is a beast.
Yeah,
right? She's so dope.
And so, you know, we're doing all this planning and stuff, but we knew we needed to have a symbol to show. This is our next year's poster, the Black and Brown Comic Arts Festival. We have a limited run of these that will be on sale for $5. I will sign it. I did the colors on this, but Jules Rivera, she did the illustration for this, and I asked her, I was like, could you please send me something? I know it's last minute, and we're doing a lot of planning, but I will color this, and I did the poster design for it. But she coined this phrase, "We will make it to the future together." Right? And so we did this piece together, and this is in her honor. And I hate that she couldn't be here, but she's here in spirit, and I really want to thank you. But this represents the future. This represents the future of this particular space and other spaces that we are pushing forth, and the alliance of these particular cultural, production methods and comics, and science fiction and fantasy and everything else, all the geeky brown stuff that we can put out. So anyway.
Yeah, remember, so look, this is what we mean. John could very easily sign something and charge $50 for it. But that's not what we're about, right? So that's the point. That's the point. It's to make sure that we have access, and we give ourselves access, and we've empowered ourselves to do that with this Black and Brown Comics Arts Festival for 2019 and on.
Yes.
All right.
Seriously, and we really do thank you, seriously, and thank you, Aaron, thank you, Sean, thank you, Frederick.
So before we close out,
Yeah.
on the line, I want to make sure that we get where people can find you. So John, What's next? Where can we find you?
Oh, I am a professor of media studies at the University of California, Riverside, and I teach classes on Afrofuturism and politics, primarily, but I'm also a comic book artist. A good way to reach out to me is J.I. Jennings on Twitter. That's the best way. That's the one I remember best, especially at the end of the day. So, yeah.
Frederick, where can we find you? What's next?
So aldama.1@osu.edu. I'm really easy. I'm the only Aldama at OSU. And what's next? I'm working on this really cool. Well, it's done. It's in production. It's called Tales from La Vida, a Latino graphics collection, and a lot of the work in that is actual collaboration between our African American and our brown brothers and sisters.
Good.
Yeah.
And he also, I think there's 2 copies of it. I bought 2 yesterday, but he has a book on Latinx superheroes that Borderlands is selling right now. So if you really want to get that book for, I think there needs to be more scholarly work about this stuff. And so it's at Borderlands right now.
And I was honored enough to do the foreword and the cover for that book. So I wanted to mention before we go to the next thing, I forgot because you said what's next. Damian Duffy and I actually put together a follow-up to our landmark book, Black Comics. It's called Black Comics Returns, being put out by Lion Forge, who are rep here today, and it drops in February. So yeah, I'm sorry.
Stacy, where can we find you? What can we get? What's next?
Sure, you can find me, first of all, I'm a professor teaching graphic design and illustration at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. The next project I'm working on is with Rosarium Publishing. It is Kid Code #2. The first issue came out. First issue came out in 2014. Sorry about that. But I am working on #2 right now, and I can show you pages. That's really awesome. And #3 will be coming out later this year as well. So that trade should be dropping whenever the publisher decides to drop it as Rosarium Publishing. What is next? I think that is next, and I think I answered the question. Where can you find me? You can find me on Instagram, Stacey A. Robinson, STACEY A. Robinson, and I am also on Facebook, and I'm on Twitter, Prof. S.A. Robinson, that's PROF.S.A. Robinson on Twitter.
And also, if you saw, how many of you picked up some of the posters that we had at the front desk? So he actually designed Alfonso Jones poster and Kid Code, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
Robert Kid Code.
Robert Love did Kid Code, and then you did Alfonso Jones.
And which John covered.
Johnson.
Absolutely.
And Damien in that book, and Tony Medina. Tony, just real quick, stand up, bro, for real. Give him a hand, please. That book is amazing. It's an amazing book. So Aaron, where can we find you? What's next? What's going on?
You can find me in the King Cut. sfmlkday.org is the site that all of these things today was happening. But I'm with the Martin Luther King Foundation, so NorCalMLKFoundation.org. You can find me there. If you need to email me, just put Aaron, AARON, in front of NorCalMLKFoundation.org. That's Aaron at NorCalMLKFoundation.org. In April, starting March 31st for a whole week, we're having a week of reflection around the death of Dr. King, and that begins with a closing ceremony that we're working with the Fine Arts Museum of San Francisco on at the DeYoung Museum to close down the Revelations art exhibit. So that is going to be something that you will want to come to, because that's going to be fly. So fly is such an old Lord.
Fly is
Lord have mercy. Yeah, but still. It's where Robert Love did. I think Robert Love was the first African-American cartoonist or cartoon artist to ever be at the DeYoung on last Saturday. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. So we're going to follow that up in March. So hopefully you guys can make it.
Me, don't do much. I teach, I write with a lot of young people like Stacey. I've been doing it for 20 years about. My next book is called Staff Support on the Front Lines of Adolescent Mental Health. It's really a guide about how to know when you are done working in that field and how to protect yourself, because it's a really rough field. And it's broken into 3 parts. When I started the work, when I became a professional, when I knew it was time to go. And then I also have Fairy Tale Mixtape coming out in February, the podcast. Please listen to it. That's really it. So once again, from the bottom of all our hearts, I think I can speak for everybody on this stage that thank you for coming and making the 4th annual BCAF Festival the best that we've had so far. So thank you very much. Thank you all.
Stepping out all night, y'all. Throw your hands in the air, party right, y'all. Stepping out all night, y'all. Throw your hands in the air, party right, y'all.